Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is yet another album review. And the album that I'm going to be discussing in this video is No Rest for the Wicked by Ozzy Osbourne. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on the album, though, I would like to give a special shout out to Bronson for requesting this review. Now, No Rest for the Wicked is from 1988, and it was Ozzy's next album after Tribute. And this was an album that, definitely got some decent airplay on the radio when it came out, and had some hit singles like Miracle Man, and it also wound up having a decent number of sales, but it's an album that had a lot of people either underwhelmed by it at the time or people who outright hated it. Like the critic for the Rolling Stone at the time, he gave it 1 out of 5 stars. So this is an album that hasn't gotten, let's just say, the best accolades or the most appreciation over the years, but even though it's not one of Ozzy's best albums, I still think it's a pretty solid album. And I think it's a lot better than its critical reputation might suggest. I honestly might even go as far to say that it's underrated. Because there's honestly only one song on this album that I'm really not that big on at all. And the rest I actually love or I liked quite a bit. It's an album that, in all honesty, I think just gets better the more that I listen to it. Now, the band this time around is comprised of some new faces and some familiar faces. The familiar face is Bob Daisley, who does bass guitar on this album. He actually worked with Ozzy in the past until Ozzy and him had a falling out in 1985, and then he was replaced by a different bassist. Now, you have Bob Daisley back on bass. You have Randy Castillo, who is doing drums. You have a keyboardist in John Sinclair, who is now on board. And the biggest new face here is Zakk Wylde. Now, Zakk Wylde is a guitarist who would go on to become pretty much a household name later on in his career, especially when it comes to some of the other albums he did with Ozzy after No Rest for the Wicked. But here he's just fresh faced, just a young up and coming guitarist. And he adds so much to this album. A big part of why this album is as good as it is really due to Zakk Wylde. And of course, you got Ozzy, who's back yet again, providing the vocals. This album is compromised out of 10 tracks if you count a bonus track. Well, actually, 11 tracks if you count the full album, which has 11 tracks on it. But the 11th track doesn't count to me because it's just a live version of Miracle Man. So the first track on this album is Miracle Man. And this is the one that I would probably say I heard the most. Because I actually remember seeing the music video for this quite a bit on MTV or VH1 Classic when I was growing up. And out of all the songs on this album, this is probably the one that's the most familiar to me. And it's still a really fantastic track. I love this track. It's got a really good hook. Um, and the guitar work by Wylde from the very beginning, it's fast and furious, it's in your face, it's got a really great a riff at the start of the song, and then it's just hard and heavy for the rest of the entirety of the track. Ozzy Osbourne's vocals are as sharp and as pointed as ever. He even does his signature laugh at the beginning. And I love that it's a fuck you, basically, to Jimmy Swaggart, the disgraced televangelist, because honestly, televangelists are scum to me. So it's just a cathartic song to listen to, uh, because it's essentially just a middle finger to televangelists. And it's definitely a contender for honestly my favorite track of the album. Like this is right up there with some of Ozzy's best, if you ask me. Miracle Man. Track two is Devil's Daughter. It's another solid track. I think this is another good one. Wild's guitar work is once again just great, and I actually think the lyrics are also not too bad. I think it's trying to have a little bit of a deeper meaning, but I don't quite understand what it is. In all honesty, it almost sounds like a song that the songwriters wrote after they saw The Exorcist. Because it honestly sounds like something that could be played right along with scenes from The Exorcist. Um and Ozzy's vocals are still strong, still good here, not too strained, and I do actually like some of the keyboard stuff and the percussion, but there's some weird voiceover stuff and effects they try to do. Uh, because as Devil's Daughter, they have a bit where there's like a baby laughing or something, and or child laughing, and it just sounds artificial and weird. And that's like the one knock I have for this song. For the most part, I really like it. I mean, Wild is just shredding on this track, and I do like the creepy, eerie, dark lyrics and the overall vibe of the track for the most part. But I can't stand that portion. I think near the middle, where it's just doing the whole fake child laughing and some weird instrumental. Like it just feels out of place, and I don't really care for that. But the rest of the song is good. Um, Now, speaking of things I don't care for, track three is Crazy Babies. Uh, this is another song that I guess a lot of people really like, but I'm not. I'm not a big fan of this one. This barely sounds like an Ozzy song. This sounds like something you would hear Aerosmith do, to be perfectly honest. Uh, it's also really corny. Like from the very beginning, you got Ozzy going crazy, babies, and I'm just like, rolling my eyes. And then the rest of the track is just not that much better. Zach Wild is just wanking around with the guitar too much. Although there are some good moments when it comes to his guitar work in this, but there's a lot of wankery. There's way too much wankery, way too much, slide. He's doing a lot of sliding with the frets and everything, and with the pick. And he overdoes it on this track. And then the chorus, uh, walk that walk. I'm like, what is this? A fucking song that I would hear on Drag Race? Like, I just don't think this is that great of a song. It's mediocre at best. It's not terrible. Wild does enough when he's not wanking around, and there are some uh, decent moments in terms of the composition to make it at least a song you can listen to, but I definitely would say it's one of the weaker tracks on the entire album. Track four though is better, but it's still kind of got some problems, and it's called "Breaking All the Rules." I like Ozzy's vocals on this. I think he's more in the right range and in the right place with this track than with Crazy Babies. Uh, and I don't mind the lyrics, but they're kind of generic. Wild, does once again some good work with the guitar, and there's some nice riffs here and there. This one has some really good percussion, some drum work by Castillo, but some of the keyboard stuff is and it just kind of it sounds like a song you would hear on the Ultimate Sin, and I like that album, but it's also not one that I'm super big on. I love a couple tracks from that album. I mean, "Shot in the Dark" is one of my favorite songs that Ozzy has ever done. But and "The Ultimate Sin" I also like, but there's a lot of filler tracks on that album. And this almost sounds like a filler track from that album to me. But it's still something that I can listen to. But it's not what I would consider something that is like a gem or something that I really like. Track 5 is "Bloodbath in Paradise." This one's very cheeky. It's essentially a song about Charles Manson, the Manson murders, and there's some very tongue-in-cheek, morbid lyrics, which I definitely didn't mind. It's definitely something that's right in Ozzy's wheelhouse. Uh, but it opens really weird with some just strange keyboard and synth work by John Sinclair, and sound effects again, and it sounds kind of cheap, to be honest, and kind of chintzy. Uh, but then it picks up once you get to the actual song, like the stuff that's just the people speaking backwards. Like, come on, man, that's so cliched. And then the synths that sound like something out of a cliched haunted house, and it's just a really bad start to the song to me. But once you get past that, I it's something that I personally have fun with, and I do actually like. I think there's some wonderful work yet again by Zach Wild on this track, and Ozzy's definitely having some fun with the lyrics and with the song in general. Um, but despite its like horror theming, it's not really what I would consider to be one of my favorite horror themed Ozzy songs. I definitely liked a lot of his earlier stuff of when it comes to like some horror themed tracks, or something that Alice Cooper did around the same time. But it's still fine, but I definitely don't think it's fantastic. And the opening synth stuff is just so weird, and it honestly reminds me of the kind of stuff you would hear from a video game, like in the '90s, specifically Batman Forever on the Super Nintendo. That there's a crazy reference for you. Um, but I think if you've actually played that game and you know what the score sounds like, I think you can actually know exactly what I'm talking about. But anyway, Bloodbath in Paradise, not a bad song, but it's just another song on the album that's just kind of okay. There is a lot of songs on this album that are like that, I have to admit. But because of the fact that they're at least consistently decent, that's why I think it's actually not as bad of an album as some people say it is. So, to me personally, tracks 6 through 9, they're a big part of why this album to me is genuinely underrated, because these tracks are, in my opinion, really terrific. This is where you get like the best tracks on the album to me in terms of uh, the guitar work or the vocals or a lot of other elements of the album. So, track 6 is honestly my favorite track on the entire album, and I honestly think it's one of Ozzy's most underrated tracks in general. It's called Fire in the Sky, and it features some really strong vocals by Ozzy, some shredding epic riffs and guitar solos by Zach Wild, some really inspired keyboard and synths by John Sinclair, some equally as good drum work by Castillo, and also some good bass playing by Daisley. And I haven't really said a lot about Daisley's bass playing when he's on there, when it comes to some of the other tracks, because it's kind of hard to really always necessarily point out bass, but he's consistent. He's consistently solid throughout the album, and this track is no exception to that. Like, this track is fantastic. I love the mood of it. I love the atmosphere. I love the chorus, the hook. It's a great track. Track 7 is Tattoo Dancer. This is another track I really like, and the main reason for it is not necessarily the lyrics. They're kind of not the best, but I like Ozzy's vocals on this, and I love Zach's guitar work on this. He is just killing it on this particular track. Just starts from the beginning, just heavy and just completely shredding, and then he just continues throughout the song, and it's just a really heavy, fast-paced track, and I really like it. Um, and then you have track 8, which is Demon Alcohol. That's another good one. Once again, Zach Wilde's just picking up. Like, it just seems like as the album went on, he just got better and better. Like, he just picked up the pace and just was just absolutely on fire. And he just kept it going here with Demon Alcohol. And Ozzy still once again delivered some, adequate enough vocals, when it comes to staying within his strengths. And then the rest of the band did some good work too, and Castillo and Daisley. Uh, but really, a lot of the strength is Wild's guitar work, and honestly the lyrics and the chorus. This has one of the better choruses too on the album when it comes to the tracks. But yeah, I actually really like the lyrics. In fact, there's actually a reference to Suicide Solution when it comes to the lyrics, which I thought was a fun thing that they did there with this track. Then you have track 9, which is Hero, which is another good one. It's more of a ballad, but it's definitely the better ballad of the two ballads that are on the track. Um, it's slower in pace, not necessarily as much as Fire in the Sky, but Fire in the Sky still had a heaviness to it. This isn't necessarily heavy, but it does still have some good guitar work by Wild and some good bass work by Daisley. And Sinclair and Castillo also do some good stuff. Sinclair in particular on this track, there's some really good instrumental work with the piano and with the synth and so on and so forth, the keyboards. Um, but I really like the lyrics on here, and I think it's definitely one of the stronger songs when it comes to just its lyrical nature. Then you get to track 10, The Liar. This is the only track on the album I don't like at all, to be perfectly honest. It just sounds like it's made for somebody else other than Ozzy Osbourne. It's too soft when it comes to its composition and the whole mood of it, and it feels so out of place when it comes to the tone of the entire album. It honestly sounds like something you would hear Meatloaf saying, or an artist like that, or Savatage. It doesn't sound like something that Ozzy would be doing, even comparison to some of the other ballads that he did on the same album. And the keyboards in particular by Sinclair are very mid or below that, especially near the end of the song, because there's some keyboard work at the end that's really bad. And Ozzy, his vocals are just kind of there for most of the song until they honestly get a little cringe inducing at the end, because he's just pushing notes out and he's not really the best at singing notes in that particular range. So it just sounds like he's straining his vocals, and it just isn't very easy on the ears, at least not for me anyway. And the lyrics are just kind of meh as well. So that's definitely the first track to me that's just firmly below average and just not good. And it was a bonus track, so it wasn't even really on the main album. So, and honestly, you can see why. But if you just look at the first 9 tracks, from the main album, you got a pretty solid album. It's not spectacular because there's a lot of tracks that are just kind of okay and listenable, but they're not tracks that you're going to listen to over and over again. But there still are some tracks on here that are straight up bangers. You know, Miracle Man, Fire in the Sky, Tattooed Dancer, Demon Alcohol, Hero, and some ones that you can have some fun with too, like Breaking All the Rules and Devil's Daughter and Bloodbath in Paradise. But really, the stars of this album to me are Miracle Mile, Fire in the Sky, Tattoo Dancer, Demon Alcohol, and Hero. The album kind of starts off a little but then it ends really strong. But anyway, that is my thoughts on this Ozzy Osbourne album, No Rest for the Wicked. And until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.